Hello, my name is Jennifer Furr. I'm the director of the Wilkes Heritage Museum. And today with me I have Mrs. Catherine Steele. She is one of my board members and volunteers here at the Wilkes Heritage Museum. And we're coming to you from the Captain Robert Cleveland Log Home, and we're going to talk to you about our school programs that we have available. We know during this time that not everyone will be able to come on a field trip to the museum. So we wanted to share with you some of the artifacts that we would like to bring to you. But we have just entered phase 2.5, so we are now open for a limited capacity. And we would love to have not only public schools, but also private schools, homeschool groups, scouting groups, any kind of groups, school-age children to come and participate in activities and tours here at the Wilkes Heritage Museum. And today we are going to be sharing with you a book entitled A is for Appalachian. It's written by Linda Hager-Pack and illustrated by Pat Banks. We're going to highlight 4 of the letters in that book and talk about some of the artifacts that we have on display at the museum, as well as some of the teaching collection items that we can take to you if you are unavailable to come to us. So first we're going to start with A. A is for Appalachian, and that highlights the area that Wilkes County is located in, right along the Appalachian Mountains. It talks a lot about our different cultures and ethnicities that we have here. First, we had a large Native American population of Cherokee. With them, they left behind some of their material culture that we have on display here. We have several of their projectile points and arrowheads. And of course, the Native Americans they used the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash. And of course, corn was also a great staple for the later European settlers that came in. We had a lot of Scotch-Irish influence as well as the English. And here we have some panels that we've taken from the museum to highlight some of those early settlers and their families. You can see they did have quite large families. This was a very rural area and still is, so they actually focused on farming. And next we are going to talk about F is for farming. And with that, we talk about the rich soil that we have here. We have some samples of that rich clay soil, the lots of water sources that we have here to create a fertile land. And of course, the clay was also used to make pottery. We had Kennedy pottery, and this was the type of ware that those early settlers and farmers would put their goods in for storage. They didn't have refrigeration. They would have well houses and springs to keep their items cool. Along with their farms, they would have garden areas. They would have a kitchen garden, and then they would also have an herb garden. And here we have samples of some of the herbs that they would grow for medicinal as well as culinary uses. We have lavender. We have the very pungent rosemary, which I use a lot today in my cooking. They have lemon balm, which could be used for cooking as well as making teas for coughs and colds. And then they had lamb's ear. This was used for medicinal uses. If you had a cut or scrape, it would be used as a bandage. And then also they didn't have indoor plumbing. This was early toilet paper. So they would use this as their Charmin. And to get all of these items down to the consistency that they would need for their cooking or medicines, they would use mortar and pestles to crush them into the consistency that they needed. And of course, these farming families, they didn't have access to electricity. Many people in this area didn't even have electricity until the 1930s. So what they would have, if they had access to honeybees, they would gather up the beeswax and would melt this down, and they would hand dip candles, or if they had molds, they could make molded candles. A lot of families didn't have access to that. So what they would do is after they cooked their meat, they would render down that fat, and they would make what they called a tallow candle. And everybody on the farm in the family, they had a different job to do. They had a different chore. They would not simply lay about and play video games all day and that kind of thing. So if they were out in the fields and they were picking crops, they had their corn. Not only would they use the corn kernels to grind it down into meal and then to eat the corn itself, but they would also use the husks. And a sample of that would be a corn husk broom or mop to clean their floors with. And in their spare time, if they had any, they would even make corn husk dolls. Many of their toys were handmade by whatever materials they had available. Next, we're going to go to the letter M for music. Everyone loves music, different styles. But a lot of those early European settlers that came to this area, they didn't have a lot of education. They didn't have access to schools on a daily basis. So a lot could not read or write. But one way they kept their traditions alive, those oral traditions, were through the ballads and the music that they brought with them. And this would also create social gatherings where they could interact with other families from the area. So it wasn't all day-to-day working dawn to dusk. They did take time out of their busy schedules to have a little bit of fun, to have music, and to pass on those stories from long ago. And with that, we also come to the letter Q for quilts. This was another way, especially for the female settlers, to come together. They would have quilting bees. They would bring their scraps of material together, and they would make beautiful, colorful patchwork quilts. And they in themselves would also create a story and tell the story of their families. They didn't have modern day heating systems. They would have had a fireplace similar to what we have here at the Cleveland house to keep warm. But to supplement, they would have these beautiful patchwork quilts to keep them warm at night. So today we've been able to share with you some of the artifacts that we have here at the Wilkes Heritage Museum. We would love to have you make a group reservation to come visit us here at the museum. And if you're not able to at this time, we would also love to be able to take what we have to you, to share with you. So please contact the museum, 336-667-3171, to arrange a tour today. Thank you.